The Baldwins, Hilaria Baldwin, A Very Fluid Narcissist, Part 9. Because of the behaviours of Alec and Hilaria Baldwin are naturally going to be caught up in one another, it's worthwhile having a brief look at how they came together in terms of their relationship. Page 6 reports, years before Hilaria Baldwin was exposed as a fraud, she met now husband Alec Baldwin and skyrocketed from a New York City yoga instructor to the A-list, racking up endless sponsorships with health and wellness products along the way. I've described in Part 8 how Hilaria Baldwin started off life as a yoga instructor, and then all of a sudden she becomes catapulted to the A-list. Now, I've never been to one of her yoga sessions. I've seen now plenty of her stretching her body and bending into lots of different shapes, and there's no doubt that she's highly flexible, which is, of course, a rather useful trait, isn't it, when it comes to my kind. But let's consider, can you think of anybody else that was essentially relatively mediocre within their profession, met somebody of higher status and then catapulted them into fame, fortune, and so forth? Anyone? Anybody there? Bueller? Yes, I know who you're all thinking of. And so, of course, for Hilaria Baldwin, along comes Alec, considerably older than her. What's Alec got that might be of interest to her? Well, he was a very good-looking man in his youth. Of course, those looks have faded somewhat with the ravages of time and the adding of weight, and he will have certainly had something about him when they first met, namely the fact that he's a very famous actor, that he's well connected, certainly on the sort of liberal side of matters, and that he's wealthy. So what do we have there? Well, money, residual benefit; access to contacts, residual benefit; fame, residual benefit. And therefore, already there are a number of things that a narcissist would certainly be interested in. What has she got to offer to him? Well, she's undoubtedly an attractive woman and considerably younger than him. Now, we've already know that Alec Baldwin is a narcissist, as we've established that in parts passim of this particular series. And therefore, it appealed to him to draw her in for the reasons that are associated with being able to control her, draw fuel from her, gain character traits, and appropriate residual benefits. Assuming that she's a narcissist, she's also looking to draw him in for similar reasons, that she can control him. Now, of course, at the outset, he wants to control her, and therefore, even though he's a narcissist, as those of you who've been ensnared by our kind, you will understand that the narcissist presents in a particular way where we're not red of tooth of claw all the time. The furious and belligerent Mr. Baldwin wasn't going to start off the courtship in any way of that fashion. Instead, he'll have been something of a pussycat, charming, interesting, no doubt perhaps even fun. And therefore those factors enable him to draw her in, and she, of course, isn't threatened by those behaviours. He wants her as she wants him, and there's a mutually beneficial, at least to begin with, start to the relationship. Accordingly, the presence of Alec Baldwin as an older man, with the contacts, network, fame, and money, are all particularly appealing things that a narcissist would want to get their claws into. Page 6 continues, explaining that their story seems as normal as any meet cute, with the couple meeting at a vegan restaurant beginning a courtship. Of course, there are aspects so ridiculous in their budding romance that it's wild no one became suspicious sooner. How they met. Alec, 62, and 36-year-old Hilaria Baldwin first met in February 2011 at now-closed vegan restaurant Pure Food and Wine. At the time of their meeting, Hilaria was working as a yoga instructor at Yoga Vida. It's unknown if she introduced herself as Hilaria or by her government name. Hilaria revealed in their New York Times wedding announcement the line that Baldwin used to get her attention. I was standing near the door with my friends when he walked up and took my hand and said, "I must know you," she recalled. From his perspective, lack of boundary recognition by talking to her in such a manner that there is lack of boundary recognition by being overly tactile. There's an assertion of control by hoovering her in this fashion. Though he needed to know her, Hilaria, who was born and raised in Boston, claimed she'd never heard of the famous actor, but was still cognizant of their 26-year age gap. Now, perhaps I'm dragging it from the depths of my memory, but do you know anybody else who, on meeting somebody who was known globally for being famous, claimed not to know the individual or have never heard of them or didn't know much about them? Who could that be, I wonder? Yes, of course, it's Harry's wife. And so, interestingly, we have here the first indications of the need to assert control. He, wealthier, better known, famous, that threatens a narcissist's sense of control, and therefore, one way of dealing with that is to be dismissive. Oh, I didn't know who they were, although, of course, knowing full well that they did. Revision of history, assertion of control by dismissiveness. Following their chance encounter, the article tells us, the two eventually went on a first date that resulted in the 30 rock star shaking her hand because he really wanted to get to know me, Hilaria recalled to the Times. Notice again this recollection, which might be accurate, or it may not, but whichever way it's being portrayed, and remember, the truth, the half-truth, and nowhere near the truth, the portrayal of him wanting to get to know her is her asserting control by either the revision of history or bringing up the past, if it did actually happen, to demonstrate that he was the one that was interested in her. The handshaking grew to become a force of habit, it seems, as Hilaria later claimed on the Ellen DeGeneres show, see H.G. Rose Ellen DeGeneres, that somehow Alec didn't kiss her for 6 entire weeks while dating. He would tell me all these things like, "I'm going to marry you," future faking, promised gain, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you," assertion of control, possessiveness, "we're going to have a ton of kids." All of those things that he's saying there, of course, did come to pass. He did marry her, and so far he has been spending the rest of his life with her, and they have had a ton of kids. Ordinarily, of course, that if those things had not occurred, that would be using the future to influence the now and be future faking. Instead, is utilise promise gain, telling her we're going to have all of these things. But saying all of these things at a very early stage in their relationship exhibits from him, once again, a sense of entitlement, a lack of boundary recognition, the need to assert control. And the fact that he would shake the hand at the end of the night is the veneer of being a decent human being, that he wasn't bending her over backwards and giving her what for, that he wasn't going to knock her hip out on the first date. The couple moved quickly, getting engaged in April 2012. So, they had met in February 2011, and they got engaged just over a year later. Swift engagement is often seen by a narcissist with regard to the assertion of control, and then marrying just 2 months later. Again, swift marriage, assertion of control, and they married on the 30th of June 2012 at St. Patrick's Old Cathedral. The article continues, Alec and Hilaria, who's reportedly now worth $10 million thanks to her lifestyle brand and book, The Living Clearly Method, dove headfirst into starting their family. Invariably, a narcissist will look to assert control over somebody else by either getting pregnant or getting the other person pregnant. Here, on the assumption that we're looking at a situation whereby two narcissists collide, he wants to get her pregnant in order to control her. She willingly wants to get pregnant for the purposes of getting him under control also. There is a dovetailing of the assertions of control, and therefore, at that stage, we're not seeing any clash between the two of them. They welcomed the first of 6 children, daughter Carmen Gabriella, in August 2013. They would go on to have 4 more sons, Raphael Thomas, 2015, Leonardo Angel Charles, 2016, Romeo Alejandro David, 2016, and Eduardo Pau, 2020. Note, all Spanish-sounding names. The couple secretly welcomed a 6th child together, announcing the news in March 2021. The former Saturday Night Live star, who's reportedly worth $60 million, also has a 25-year-old daughter, Eileen Baldwin, whom he shares with ex-wife Kim Basinger. Prior to welcoming their fifth baby, Edu, Hilaria suffered 2 miscarriages. Even though I'd had a miscarriage before, I don't think I could have fathomed how bad it could feel to have a miscarriage at 16 weeks, she shared in an essay for Glamour. Again, do we know anybody else that utilises a personal tragedy by splashing it all over social media or through magazines? Could it be Harry's wife again? I had to go home and sleep with my dead baby inside of me. I felt sick, sour in my belly, and so devastated. So that's a little bit of that's a swift run-through on the relationship between Alec Baldwin and Hilaria, how they came together, and identifies already how each would prove attracted to the other and how they would assert control over one another. Let's turn now to some of the behaviours that have been exhibited thereafter and analyse them to let you understand more about what Hilaria Baldwin is. Join me, therefore, in part 10 for further analysis.